Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if your gut feeling is actually a real thing, and how it might be talking to your brain? Well, this new research dives deep into that connection, exploring the hidden conversations happening between your stomach and your head. We often hear about the gut microbiome and how it affects our mood and brain. But what about the actual movement inside your gut? This paper looks at how the way your stomach and intestines move, called gut motility, influences your brain activity, how you think, and even how you feel. They're using fancy brain imaging tools to figure this out. Think of it like this. There is constant communication going back and forth between your gut and your brain. Most of the time, scientists have focused on what the little bugs in your gut are sending to your brain. But this research asks, what about the physical actions happening in your gut, like when your stomach churns or your intestines move? How does that physical signaling affect what is going on in your head? So, what exactly is gastrointestinal motility? It is basically the muscle contractions that push food through your stomach and intestines. It is how digestion happens. And it is not just about processing food. These movements also send signals up to your brain through nerves. This is where it gets really interesting. They've noticed that problems with gut movement or motility show up early in serious brain diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. That hints that a healthy gut is pretty important for a healthy brain. Even in people who are just getting older, how often they have bowel movements seems to be linked to how well their brain functions. And for younger folks, gut activity can influence emotions and how we feel. It is clear that gut motility is a big deal in how our gut and brain talk to each other, and scientists are starting to pay more attention. To study this, researchers are using a few different approaches. One way is by looking at people who already have issues with their gut movement, like those with constipation or irritable bowel syndrome, and comparing their brain scans to healthy people. They're using techniques like fMRI and EEG, which are like special cameras and sensors for the brain. Another really cool method is using something called electrogastrography, or EGG. This measures the electrical activity of the muscles in your stomach. Think of it like an electrocardiogram or EKG for your heart. But for your stomach, they can record these stomach signals at the same time they're recording brain signals. This allows them to see if there is a connection or coupling between what your stomach is doing and what your brain is doing. So, what do these studies show? When they look at people with gut problems, they often see differences in brain areas that are involved in processing bodily sensations and paying attention to what is happening, like the insula, the thalamus, and parts of the prefrontal cortex. These are the areas that help us know what our body is feeling and decide what is important. One study in particular did something very direct. They had people swallow a special meal and then measured their stomach movement using MRI while also looking at their brain's resting state connectivity. They found that patients with a condition called functional dyspepsia had slower stomach movement and, interestingly, different connections between their brainstem and parts of their brain. Even more exciting, they saw that the connection between a brain area called the nucleus tractus solitarius and certain brain areas actually changed based on how fast the stomach was moving. This is a really strong hint that stomach movement directly influences brain communication. Beyond just observing people with existing conditions, scientists also do experiments where they deliberately stimulate the gut. They might use a small balloon to gently stretch the stomach or the rectum. This mimics the feeling of fullness or pressure and allows researchers to see how the brain reacts to these specific sensations. When they do this kind of experimental stretching, they see activity in those same brain areas related to sensing and evaluating bodily signals we talked about earlier, like the insula and the cingulate cortex. But when the stretching is done in a more natural way, like by drinking water, the brain activity is a bit different, suggesting our brain interprets natural feelings differently than artificial ones. They've also found that hormones like ghrelin, which is related to hunger, can influence how the brain reacts to stomach stretching. Another clever tool they're using is vibrating capsules. You swallow it, and it vibrates gently in your gut. This method is thought to focus more on the mechanical signals, without as much influence from hormones or digestion. When people swallow these, scientists can see specific electrical patterns in the brain that seem to be related to sensing these vibrations. This suggests that even subtle mechanical cues from the gut can reach the brain and affect our perception. So, what does all of this mean? The research suggests that the way your stomach moves and the signals it sends are linked to a lot of things beyond just digestion. For instance, one study found that women who had fewer bowel movements per week showed weaker brain, stomach coupling. This coupling was also linked to the amount of certain chain fatty acids in their gut, which are produced by gut bacteria. This hints at a complex interplay between gut movement, bacteria, and brain communication. Lower stomach-brain coupling has also been connected to issues with body image and preoccupation with weight. This suggests that signals from our gut might influence how we perceive ourselves. Interestingly, when people are under stress, this stomach-brain connection can actually become stronger, and in individuals experiencing higher anxiety, depression, and fatigue, this coupling is also observed to be higher. This points to a link between our gut's physical activity and our mental well-being. The next big step is figuring out how to use this knowledge. One exciting area is using technology to influence stomach-brain signaling. For example, transcutaneous auricular vagus nerve stimulation, or TAVANS, is a non-invasive way to stimulate a nerve that connects the gut and brain. They found that TAVANS can increase this stomach-brain connection and even improve gut motility. This opens up possibilities for therapies to help with digestive issues. Another approach is using medications. A drug called domperidone, which helps with stomach movement, has been shown to reduce negative reactions to unpleasant images. They think this might be because the rhythmic activity of the stomach plays a role in how we process things like disgust. Researchers are also looking at drugs like semaglutide, which are used for diabetes and obesity. These drugs affect gut hormones and stomach activity, and preclinical studies suggest they might also help with mood and cognition, further strengthening the gut-brain connection idea. What the researchers are piecing together is that the gut-brain connection through motility isn't just a single highway. It involves several different brain networks that seem to handle different aspects of gut signaling. One network is involved in processing discomfort and pain, especially when there are gut problems. Another network seems to be more about monitoring our internal body state, like when we're full or hungry, and then there is this other interesting network that seems to be about integrating ongoing gut rhythms with our senses and our actions. Almost like our brain is constantly keeping tabs on what our gut is up to in the background. The big question now is how these different brain networks talk to each other and if they work in sequence or as separate systems. To really understand this, future research needs to combine all these methods, looking at people with gut issues, doing experimental stimulations, measuring gut and brain activity at the same time, and even looking at hormones and metabolism.